Great. I'd like to call the regular meeting of Township Council for Monday, January 27th to order. And of course, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, and in particular, our valued relationships with the Katzie, Kwantlen, Matsqui, and Semiahmoo First Nations. With that, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda? Moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Wren. Is there any discussion? Call the Councillor Richter.
Yes, I'd like to delete item I.3 or under P, or 1.3 under P.
P. Okay, is there a second to that?
I didn't hear this, sorry, I didn't hear it.
If you could repeat that, Councillor Richter?
Yeah, I'd like to delete I.3 under P.
It's under the closed meeting agenda, item I.3. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Kuntz. Go ahead on any discussion on that removal? No, call the question on the removal. Oh, gotta label it. That's defeated with Councillor Pratt, Councillor Rint, Mayor Woodward, Councillor Van Popta, Councillor Bailey, Councillor Ferguson opposed. Councillor Pratt, did you have anything else on the agenda?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I just want to confirm that N1 is not the Ag Advisory Committee. I don't remember sitting on the seniors with Councillor Rint.
What's the issue with the agenda?
So
Following.
on N1, it is listed as an item from the Seniors Advisory Committee, recommended motion, but I believe it's from the Agricultural Advisory Committee.
No, I don't think
If
so.
I may, no.
No.
In this case, it was an item that was deferred, so
Okay.
you seconded the motion when it originally came on.
So this was deferred to the budget timeline, Councillor Pratt, if now I recall. So the budget is on the
Right. Yep, thank you.
agenda for endorsement, so this is returned. Is that correct, Ms. Bauer? Ms. Bauer, I just want to confirm the process. So this was deferred to the budget process. The budget's on the agenda for endorsement. That's why it's here.
Yes, I believe the council made the deferral and to time it with the agenda.
Yeah, great.
Or the,
Great, thanks. Any other discussion on the agenda? Call the question on A1. That carries with Councillor Richter opposed. Get a motion to adopt the regular meeting minutes of January 13th, moved by Councillor Rint, seconded by Councillor Bailey. Any discussion on B1? So you now call the question on B1. That carries unanimously. Get a motion to adopt the public hearing meeting minutes of January 13th, moved by Councillor Rint, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Is there any discussion on B2? Seeing none, call the question on B2. That carries unanimously. First item is a presentation on the Surrey-Langley SkyTrain project, an update from, let me see if I can correct this correctly, Giles Assier. Did I get that right? Please come forward. Yeah, thank you. And thanks for coming here today, and definitely looking forward to see where you're at. Go ahead. Oh, there you are. Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Yes. So thank you and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gilles Assier. I'm the Executive Project Director for the Surrey-Langley SkyTrain project. And I'm with the Transportation Investment Corporation, which is the provincial crown corporation that is delivering this project. First, I would like to acknowledge with gratitude that I'm speaking today to you on the traditional territories of the Kwantlen, Katzie, Matsqui, and Semiahmoo First Nations. Next. So thank you for the opportunity to provide you with a project update today. The Surrey-Langley SkyTrain project has made significant progress in 2024, due in part to the strong working relationships that we have with each of our partner municipalities, including the Township of Langley. As you may be aware, the municipal agreement in place establishes a cooperative framework that details project processes and responsibilities between the province, the township, and the project contractors for the duration of the project. This enabled a productive relationship and collaboration, and we look forward in 2025 to continue that relationship. So you will see that there are a number of key achievements that will be coming this year, but first let's have a quick reminder of the project itself. So as you know, the Surrey-Langley SkyTrain project will extend the Expo line by 16 kilometers all the way to Langley city center. It's primarily along Fraser Highway, and it will be on an elevated guideway, similar to the SkyTrain in Surrey that comes all the way to the King George station. After Willowbrook Mall, the guideway takes a turn away from Fraser Highway, and then the last stretch, it will be on Industrial Avenue in the city of Langley, terminating at 203 Street and Industrial. As the first rapid transit expansion to Langley, the project will provide fast, frequent, and flexible transit for those who live, work, and play in this community. And once complete, TransLink will operate the extension similarly to the rest of the network and the SkyTrain network. South of the Fraser, as you know, is one of the fastest growing areas in the region, and this priority investment in expanding transit will be a catalyst to connect communities with benefits and opportunities for years to come. Most importantly, on opening day, you will see a 22-minute commute from the center of the Langley city center all the way to King George SkyTrain, and just above 1 hour with no transfer all the way to downtown Vancouver. Of note, there will be also 14 kilometers of new active transportation pathways for those who walk, cycle, and roll. And this pathway will help facilitate access to the stations and drive transit ridership. Sorry, I'm getting... All right, let's spend a bit of time on the highlights of the two new stations that will be in the township and the city of Langley. The design have progressed significantly over the last 2 years, and we very much appreciate all the collaboration that we have seen between the project and municipalities throughout the full design advisory process. Willowbrook Station at 196th Street and Fraser Highway features a transit exchange to facilitate ridership from the township of Langley and Cloverdale. TransLink, as you know, recently announced the proposed bus rapid transit, the route between Langley and Maple Ridge. This will leverage the Willowbrook station and as a key hub, and the station will connect even more transit riders to and from the region. Beyond this, the station will support future commercial and residential redevelopment of the surrounding area. Looking at the Langley City Centre station, this will be a catalyst for a major revitalization of the area, helping to foster a vibrant, transit-oriented neighborhood in Langley City. The Surrey-Langley SkyTrain extension and the station transit exchange will connect residents and visitors to the rest of Metro Vancouver. This Willowbrook, similar to Willowbrook, this station will feature a landscaped plaza, accessible pathways around the station, and a secure enclosed bike parkade. More details on all those will be forthcoming. Looking now at the project timeline, so following the approval of the business case in 2022, the project went through a competitive procurement and a process from 22 to 24. Advanced and early works, including utility relocations, site preparation, all this work began earlier last year with major construction now underway. The anticipated in-service date for the Surrey-Langley SkyTrain is late 2029. The last time we presented to you, we were still in procurement. Now we are able to announce last summer that we have 3 contractors who will be building this project, one focusing on the guideway and the elevated guideway, one focusing more on the 8th station, and then another one looking at system and track works. A great deal has happened since these contractors were onboarded last summer, and I will turn your attention now to what we achieved in 2024. So advanced works have been underway for some time. For example, in early 24, BC Hydro started significant work across the alignment to prepare for SkyTrain construction. After awarding our contract, our contractors worked quickly to start clearing and demolition of station sites and we achieved 90% of the station clearance by the end of the year. Our guideway contractor established a guideway segments precast concrete facility in Surrey and Campbell Heights. And this casting building was about 40% complete by the end of the year. This is where all the segments that are then assembled to create the spans between columns will be cast and then moved to their location. The province also held 2 rounds of public engagement on the station's design to advance them forward and towards its final design. And in November 2024, major construction began with drilling and piling. We started at 152 Street Station, Bakerview 156 Street, and then Hillcrest 184 Street Station sites. By the end of the year, the first 15 foundation piles were complete. You can see on this picture here, one of those foundation piles being prepared. So traffic pattern and changes such as lane closures and detours have been implemented along Fraser Highway to allow for construction. And we want to thank everyone for your patience and everyone's patience by traveling along Fraser Highway. The photo on the left is showing the intersection near Highway 15, looking north. And in general, there will be 1 lane of traffic open in each direction along Fraser Highway throughout construction. The details about traffic changes on Industrial Avenue will be forthcoming and once they are confirmed, and then after engagement with local businesses there. Our contractors expect to implement a full closure of Fraser Highway between 140th Street and 96th Avenue in Surrey this spring. This, we know, will impact Langley commuters, so robust communication will take place well in advance of the closure. And at that time, we don't have any full-time daytime closures planned on Fraser Highway for subsequent years. So let's look at 2025. We are very excited to continue the momentum we experienced last year. And 25 is going to be a very busy year for the project, especially advancing the guideway elements along the entire alignment. Construction will advance significantly over the coming months, and soon you will be able to start recognizing a SkyTrain arriving in the region. Over the course of 2025, so we will complete the majority of all the utility works, including most of the work near 203 station by the terminus and around the terminus stations. The precast concrete facility, where you see a picture here on this slide, will be in full operations, producing those segments that will be then installed and creating the spans. The casting underway construction, so we start building spans, so I already mentioned that. And then we will have approximately 200 guideways, columns, and piers that will be installed along the length of the alignment. In the township of Langley at Willowbrook Station, work will be expected to start on guideway foundations late summer, early fall, moving east toward Highway 10. We will start construction at Green Timbers and Fleetwood, Clayton, and Langley City Centre stations. At the Langley City stations, foundation work, including the installation of about 60 piles this year, is expected to start late spring, early summer. And the majority of foundation work along Industrial Avenue will be planned for the following year. So looking at communication and engagement, our team continues to engage with the entire businesses, residents, and other stakeholders along the entire length of the alignment. This is to inform them of project updates and to engage on ways to mitigate construction impacts. The project team is working to minimize disruptions and maximize predictability, and will continue direct outreach throughout the construction. To this end, we are working closely with our construction contractors to install wayfinding signage, maintain accessible pathways to properties, and provide timely notification and detours. So the goal is to ensure that people know that local businesses are open and can navigate construction areas safely, and this is a key priority for our project during the construction. To conclude, we continue to share regular updates about construction activities in a variety of ways, including email notification, websites, and signage. And of course, we encourage everyone to register on our website, surrey-langley-skytrain.ca. And additionally, we already have a 24/7 line where people can call and raise questions or concerns or comments. We wanted to conclude to thank everyone for your ongoing support for this very transformational project. I look forward to providing all of you with future updates as the project continues, and I'm now happy to respond to any question you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. I have some questions from council for sure. Councillor Pratt.
Yeah, thank you very much, Your Worship, et merci beaucoup, Monsieur Assier, pour votre présentation. I know that this is a provincially led project as opposed to the BRT, which was TransLink led. But now that BRT is terminating at Willowbrook, I was wondering if you anticipated any delays or any adjustments to the design of the Willowbrook station as a result of being the BRT terminus that might slow down the project in any way, shape, or form.
So we have a defined scope within the Surrey-Langley SkyTrain project. We've gone through the planning of all the stations. We've done the engagement last year. There's at this stage no plan for changes. There's going to be around Willowbrook a transit exchange. So once we know more about the details, I expect that the BRT will be following and using that transit loop. So,
yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Ferguson.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur. I did want to ask you regarding things. Councillor Pratt actually asked some of it. The normal things is the design for both the Surrey side and the Langley City side. Imagine it's significantly bigger than the design at Willowbrook Station for like shops and services and what they call offices and other ones, if I may, through a chair.
So you're referring to the design of the station?
Yes.
So they will have, all stations will have similar set of features. Of course, 3 of them have a bus exchange loop. But in each station, there will be some opportunities for retails, for instance. Those will be managed by TransLink, who is the operator of the line.
Okay, and if I let my last question, if I may, is the question always asked around any of the SkyTrain stations, especially the new ones coming in. What's the status of washing facilities, access for folks disabled or otherwise, and parking? Those are the 3 things usually come up,
Okay.
if I may.
So in terms of washrooms, there will be washrooms at each stations. Those will be requiring assistance from a SkyTrain attendant. They will be available to the public, but again, through a SkyTrain attendant. With regard to parking, this project is all about moving people through either transit or through the multi-use pathways by bicycle or walking. So as part of the scope of the project, there is no dedicated parking in the scope. But we understand that, for instance, the city of Surrey is looking at creating about 300 park and ride spaces along some key stations. And that's something that the cities are planning around the alignment. So, with regard to accessibility, so each station have elevators, and they will be available. Like we're following the TransLink guidelines around accessibility. It's something that we also discussed and presented during our open houses that we had in June and December around the design of the station. So.
I just kind of wonder, I know, looking at Willowbrook Mall, I'm sure that they're not open in the evening. And I'm just wondering if you or any of your team would be able to sit down and say, look, well, anything after your business hours, if people are parking there, can you negotiate something like that, if I may?
That's something I'm not involved with in terms of the operations of the SkyTrain. So I don't know the answer to that, but I would be if I could take the question and we could.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Hugo.
Thank you. Merci.
Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the elevators because sometimes when the elevators are being serviced and that, the SkyTrain stations are out of service to people, especially in wheelchairs and that. So it's single elevator or dual end like some of the stations in Surrey are?
So right now the plan is to have single elevators. There's 2 stations where we have already designed for additional elevators in the future when operations will require it. For each of the stations there will be a single one. We recognize that if an elevator needs to be serviced, for instance, this creates additional travel time where someone needs to go to the next stations for instance. But right now that's the current plan.
And how are you doing with I haven't heard any mention about the yard down on Fry's Corner. How's that coming along? The operations yard?
For the segment construction?
Or it's going to be a maintenance yard from what I understand.
Sorry, so adjacent to the Surrey Langley SkyTrain project will be an operations and maintenance yard, so that's correct. And the location is near Fraser Highway and Highway 15. This project has a separate stream and is managed by a different team. I don't have more details than that at that stage, but we will also similarly can bring the questions to the people that are managing that, and we can get back to you.
So how are they doing with the test results coming out of the flats down there? I heard that there are problems finding solid footing for the pilings down there.
So for the SkyTrain itself, as part of planning, there was a lot of geotechnical investigations done, and we have a full map of the entire alignment with where the glacial till is, which is where the solid ground is. You're right, and in the area of Serpentine Valley, the soil is pretty soft, and some of those piles will actually go up to 90 meters deep into the soil. So that's going to be all along near Highway 15, along Serpentine River. That's going to be requiring quite a lot of work there. Last year, one of the things we've done is additionally to all the geotechnical and boreholes that were planned, that were done during the planning, our contractor also did, but more than 200 boreholes in the area to confirm and refine their designs. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Can you clarify a couple things for me? I do appreciate Councillor Bailey raising the issue of a second elevator. Can you confirm again that that's not included in the design? And you said 3 stations do have it?
So it's not included in the design, and we have provision for 2 at 140 station and at Fleetwood.
But not in the 2 Langley Township and Langley City SkyTrain stations do not have that currently?
No.
And can I ask why that would be? So in the scope of the SkyTrain project, does 5 additional elevators really significantly impact the budget? Because the Mayor's Council has even raised this a year or 2 ago. I believe it was Mayor Harvey that raised it, that when these elevators go out of order, that essentially these SkyTrain stations are inaccessible to a large portion of the public. So can I confirm why it wouldn't be standard to include 2 elevators in a SkyTrain station?
So the planning phase, I mean, the scope, that's where the scope was established. And this is where there was, we identified that there was some provision for additional ones at 2 of the stations. I am not sure why it's not a standard, but as I mentioned also, these stations follow the TransLink guidelines with regard to accessibility.
Okay, well, I may be able to follow up on that.
Yeah.
So I will, if you can make a note that I'll follow up on that specifically. Yeah.
Yes.
Councillor Pratt.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. And it was just in response to something Councillor Ferguson brought up. It jogged my mind to ask this. And now that BRT is terminating at Willowbrook, is my understanding correct that at the Langley City Centre stop, there is a provision for some level of transit police office space or some presence there? And if that's the case, would it make sense to also have some kind of police presence or transit police presence at the Willowbrook station now that there's going to be a subsequent, a terminus of another line there as well?
So both will have a bus loop, a bus exchange loop. This Langley City Centre will have a police hub. So this is fully accessible by the public. There will be on the other 4 other stations a administrative space for the transit police, and one of them will be at Willowbrook. And the transit police, as you know, is one of the only transportation in North America that has its own dedicated police. And the importance, that's why we recognize the importance of having that access and the space available for them.
Thank you.
Councilor Martins?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for coming today and providing the update. It's excited when you actually see physically, you can look around and see the progress. So well done. It's a huge project. Just on your comments about transit police, I just want to clarify. They are the police of jurisdiction for the transit properties. But beyond that, unless things have changed, they do not have jurisdiction as soon as you move off the property as the primary police service. Could you maybe just confirm that? Or do you know?
So I am not the best to answer
Okay.
that, because it's the operations are TransLink operations.
Yeah.
That's another question we can take. Sorry. Yep.
Yeah, thank you, because I think that is an important distinction that we should get some clarification on. My understanding is, yes, they are the jurisdictional police service for the transit properties, but that's where it ends. And then the police of jurisdiction become the department in that municipality. I think it'd be really important to check that. Thank you.
Thanks. 17 other speakers from council. I have one last question. Are you on schedule?
So you could see the great progress from 2024. 2025 is going to be a very busy year.
Yeah.
And we have our 3 contractors all aligned and working hard every day, day in, day out to make it happen. And the opening date is late 2029.
And does that account for some commissioning period? So is that when the
Yes.
public can step on a train, or is that when we
Yes.
see trains on the track?
No, that's the day when the
The public.
public officially can start. There are 22 minutes back and forth, back to going to King's George and back in
Well,
22 minutes. too.
hopefully there's in that same time frame of 2029, there's a fully implemented bus rapid transit system up 200th Street to deliver people to that SkyTrain network
Yes.
and increase and improve the ridership from other parts of Langley. So hopefully we can get an update soon on when that will be funded by the provincial government, as they committed to do in the last election campaign.
Yeah, it would be great to see, and then there would be good connections to many parts of the region.
And hopefully we have somebody here that can hold them accountable on that commitment to Langley. So thank you very much for that.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and looking forward to talk to you again.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, so next item, reports to council, item E1, Agricultural Land Commission. Councilor Pratt, you have your Agricultural Land Commission application number 100458. Does anybody wish to move the recommendation? Moved by Councilor Pratt, seconded by Councilor Bailey. Councilor Richter, go ahead.
Yes, I note that this is currently a contiguous 37.9 acre parcel of land that will be divided into 7 rural lots ranging from 4.2 to 6.3 acres with RU1 zoning. So I have 2 questions around that. Number 1, what are the number of housing units permitted under the RU1 zoning? And question number 2, is stratification possible under the RU1 zoning? And if stratification does occur, how many housing units would then be permitted?
Through your worship to Councilor Richter, RU1 zoning in the land reserve provides for 1 primary single-family dwelling, given that it's in the land reserve.
Okay. But is there like a secondary or a suite or a secondary like farm help or something like that?
Through your worship to Councilor Richter, pursuant to the provisions of the Agricultural Land Commission Act, should they meet those requirements, there's additional opportunities for farm help, but that would have to meet that threshold. These are 4.2 acre lots. The threshold would have to be met. With respect to your question about stratification, that also would require a subsequent approval process to the land reserve through a separate subdivision application process, and those to date have not been supported by the commission.
Thank you.
Councilor Pratt?
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'm pleased to see that the proponent has come forward with a pretty extensive addition to the Arbor Ribbon Trail. And I know that there's been conversations with staff and council about how to increase the trail size. And I was curious through yourself to staff just to confirm, when I look at the map indicating where the trail is, it says 3-meter trail and 7.5 meter SPEA setback. And I was curious if that 3-meter trail is within the setback area or if it is in addition to the setback area.
Through your worship to Councillor Pratt, the subdivision layout currently is conceptual in nature. As the properties in the land reserve, they have a specific SPEA setback requirement. The township standard is to have those trails outside of those SPEA areas to protect those watercourses. So that will be the intent here. Staff expect, based on past practice and comment from the Agricultural Land Commission, Commission may come back with some buffering requirements in addition to the protection of the watercourses. And the details of those items and the trail at a 3-meter standard outside the SPEA area and potentially in combination with a buffering component would be reviewed at that time.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Richardson. This is one of those moments where I'm pleased with some of the changes that have been made, and the way we get alerted to applications has been really helpful in starting some of these conversations. So really pleased to see how we can further extend the trail. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other discussion on item E1? Seeing none, I'll call the question on item E1. That carries with Councillor Richter opposed. Item E2, capital request for 27th Avenue extension, moved by Councillor Rint, seconded by Councillor Bailey. Councillor Richter, go ahead.
Yeah, I noted in the report on page 2 that this is a medium priority project as opposed to critical or high priority. So if it's just medium importance, I guess the question I'm asking, is this money taking away from either critical or high priority projects?
Mr. Cooner, I believe this was from direction of council to wanting to see this road complete for the fire hall and the approved park that's being installed in the area?
That is correct, Your Worship. This is an opportunity to potentially do some further design works in relation to the 27th Avenue extension for the Brookswood Fern Ridge Fire Hall.
Okay, so it's not taking money away from critical or high projects.
The funding source is outlined in the resolution here is within the roads development cost charges, so it would be an item that is qualified under the roads DCC program.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I may, through the chair, even though it is a medium, I understand an important part of this is the extend the life of an asset. We've often been criticized for not building something that will last for a long time. I don't know in this case how much longer we intend to making it last or using this item. But I also refer to, we'll be talking about E3, about culvert and placement and making assets, but I won't be asking that then. So if I may, through the chair, about the extent of the life of an asset, if I may?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Ferguson, that is correct. We always want to be cognizant of the fact that we are able to extend the life of an asset here. We do have an opportunity to look at some design works prior to the actual 27th Avenue extension being done. It will be crucial to have it done now rather than at a separate date, which may increase the cost or potentially double the amount of work associated with it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I indeed feel that to be important.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, I really support this because we've run into trouble before with turning radiuses for engines and other equipment that might go in there, and I really think that doing this properly at the start of the process is very important. And this is going to be the entrance to the fire hall the vast majority of the time for the vehicles.
Seeing no other discussion, I call the question on E2. That carries unanimously. Item E3, 2025-2027 culvert replacement program, moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Councillor Ferguson,
Here
go
I
ahead.
go. Thank you very much, if I may, through the chair. Here we are. We have on page 2 of the report, some 8,000 culvert locations. So again, extending life of infrastructure is important. My question, if you can, try to answer, as I learned from liquid waste, the technology behind some of the pipes and replacements, are there opportunities for certain types of materials and coatings to extend the life of some of these infrastructure projects, if I may?
Your worship, to Councillor Ferguson, there is going to be opportunities when we go through the procurement process itself to see what type of material will be used. Specifically here, we have indicated the current material that's been used for these culvert types, whether it's the culverts on 40th Avenue or 216, whether it's concrete or CSP.
Okay, so just maybe if I may, the engineering, if not, we are now using some type of a coating with our liquid waste plant through the piping that we're hoping to extend the life of the infrastructure. I'm not sure if you've got something like that. That's what I kind of meant.
Through your worship, yeah, there's certain materials that you can coat pipes to increase the lifespan. It just, in a lot of cases with our culverts, we need to upsize the actual size of the culvert and for climate change. So then that's not always possible, and we actually have to dig it up.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Councillor Richter?
Yeah, I was just wondering why we're funding this from debt. It says from external debt. And what is the external debt source? Will it be another borrowing bylaw?
Mr. Cooner?
Your worship, to Councillor Richter, I believe the direction itself from council was to explore viable options. At this time, external debt would be the viable option, and when we bring forward the borrowing bylaw, that would determine where the repayment and the debt servicing will, what reserves or what general revenue will be used.
Okay, so this 13.927 additional $1 million in a borrowing bylaw that will be coming forward, what does that take our current level of external borrowing to?
I think it would. It wouldn't affect external debt until it's used, Mr. Cooner. There continues to be statements confusing borrowing bylaws with debt taken. So I believe this would add to the available borrowing bylaws that are in place. Do we have that number of the authorized borrowing bylaws?
In total, it's 653.3, and this would add another 14 million.
653.3 million plus this. Okay, thank you.
And Ms. Ruff, that includes the debt from the previous councils, does it not?
Correct, that's the total.
That's correct.
And the debt from the previous council was 168 million.
It was 175, actually.
Well, I don't think that was the number we were given in a previous meeting. I wonder if I could
That
just have
includes the non-MFA debt that was on the Langley Event Center.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Pratt?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Assuming this is passed and assuming a borrowing bylaw comes forward that enables us to potentially move forward on these projects, specifically about the 40th Avenue culvert replacement project that I know is on the top of a lot of people's minds. Are we still waiting to hear back from higher levels of government on potential funding, and is that coming, first of all? And second of all, if a borrowing bylaw was approved, how quickly could we move on replacement of the culvert at 40th and 214th?
I think it's important to note for the public and for council that funding is not what's holding up the project. So Mr. Rule can confirm that. It's a reality of construction, the availability of custom culverts and fisheries windows and seeing the flows reduce. So it's not a funding issue that's holding up its replacement. Mr. Rule, I think
I appreciate that, but my question was more so beyond the fisheries window. A, are we getting the funding from the province? And B, notwithstanding the fisheries window, how quickly could we then move on the
So I reviewed with Mr. Rule late last year every possibility to speed it up. Mr. Rule, maybe just give a brief on what some of the options were and then their expense and the current timeline for replacement.
Okay, yeah, through your worship, the current timeline for replacement is this year, but we do have to get environmental approvals in place. We've secured the box culverts that we need. Those will be being manufactured shortly. And then we just need for the flows to come down in the creek. So we should be starting in the spring and completing sometime in the summer.
Fantastic. Thank you.
And Mr. Rule, we reviewed the option of a Bailey Bridge. I believe you determined that it wasn't viable.
Correct. Yeah, just the timeline to get the bridge in. It would only be in place for, I think, about a month, and it would be in the millions of dollars.
Yep. Great. Any other speakers on item E3? Seeing none, call the question on item E3. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Item E4, 2025-2029 Facilities Renewal Plan. There's 3 options. So is there any questions about the report before options are considered? So I think this one, no, Councillor Kuntz, go ahead.
Yeah, so if we're talking about a facilities renewal reserve, would we be able to borrow from that reserve for other priorities? Or does this stay a facilities renewal reserve?
Ms. Ruff?
We have a facilities renewal reserve. I think the intention was to use funding from that to help fund the debt.
It says here that we are, oh, okay. Well, it says here facilities renewal reserve to be funded from external debt. Okay, so I was under the impression that we were establishing a facilities renewal reserve.
So there's 3 options, and I think staff are looking for council direction on which option to explore further. There is a facilities renewal reserve that's been existing for years. It has a base budget annual transfer, putting money into that reserve that funds projects. I think this report is identifying the liability of existing facilities that have not been maintained, and some others that are coming up that have significant issues down the road. So making council aware of it and seeking direction on the direction to go to solve it with those 3 options.
Okay, so what is our reserve at currently?
Ms. Ruff, I believe it's just over 3 million.
That is correct.
So it would be up to council to sort of pick one of these options. Given the budget on today's agenda, I was going to suggest we defer this and discuss it further on February 3rd. Okay, so I'll move. Oh, does anybody else wish to ask any questions? And then I'll move deferral. Councillor Pratt?
I'll wait till we discuss it in February. Thank you.
Okay, great. So I'll move deferral of E4 to February 3rd, seconded by Councillor Rint. Is there any discussion on deferral? Seeing none, I'll call the question on E4, deferral. That carries unanimously. Item E5, draft 2025-2029 financial plan. It's here on the agenda for endorsement, so this is not a bylaw reading. This is simply for endorsement, and it'd be appropriate to make amendments or referrals or other requests specific to the endorsement. So I'll move the recommendation, seconded by Councillor Rint. Is there any discussion, any amendments? Councillor Martins, go ahead.
Thank you. I noticed there are 4 separate motions within this motion. I'd like to move for division.
Okay, is there a seconder to division? Seconded by Councillor Richter. Is there any discussion on division? Go ahead, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, no, just because they are all on the same topic, but they're different. So I'd just like to discuss them individually.
Okay, so that's no seeing other speakers. I'll call the question on division. It's E5. Division fails with Councillor Rint, Mayor Woodward, Councillor Van Popte, Councillor Bailey, Councillor Ferguson opposed. Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, I'd like to move an amendment.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, it's very brief. That the McLeod Athletic Park and Langley Park sports box repairs and rehabs be funded with $130,000 from the Facilities Renewal Reserve.
Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Rint. Go ahead, Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, I think both of these facilities need this money. I can speak more to the Langley Park sports box. The floor on that thing, when it has any moisture whatsoever, is extremely slippery. It inhibits the use, and even when you're using it, it puts a greater possibility of injuries to the people, especially the young kids that use it.
Great, so thank you for that.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor? If we could have that read back one time, it was quite quick and we didn't get it ahead of time.
Sorry, sure. That the McLeod Athletic Park and Langley Park sports box repairs and rehabilitations be funded with $130,000 from the Facilities Renewal Reserve.
Great, thanks. Councillor Pratt, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I was reading it back, I think answered the question. So it's the West Langley Park Sports Box. Those two items are $65,000 worth in the capital
Yeah,
list, and we're just funding them.
we're adding funding for those to the draft. The draft operating capital budget, sorry, just gonna make sure we're amending the endorsement to have staff come back with that included in the bylaw. Is there any other discussion on that amendment? Councillor Martins, go ahead.
I'm sorry, no, for the main motion when we get back to it.
All right, any other discussion on that amendment? Councillor Bent? No?
Sorry, on that amendment.
Yeah, on Councillor Bailey's amendment. Great, so I'll call the question on the amendment. That carries unanimously. I see no other speakers. I have an amendment, couple of amendments. So we can go to yours first. Councillor Van Poptek, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to make an amendment
Yeah, go ahead.
that council endorse that staff conduct in-depth reviews and presentations and/or reports to council on fleet and facilities for operating efficiencies and potential programs and services adjustments.
Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Rent. Go ahead.
No, I think the motion speaks for itself.
Speaks for itself. Any other discussion on that amendment? Okay, I'll call the question on that amendment. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Councillor Van Poptek, Councillor Ferguson, go ahead.
Yes, I left the clerk with my amendments.
Okay, do you have one? Go ahead.
Yes. The first one, the addition of flagpoles at Redwoods Golf Course be funded up to $30,000 from the Capital Projects Reserve.
Yeah,
I think that you have that.
I'll second that. Go ahead, Councillor Ferguson.
Did you, oh, Ms. Power, there you go. I wanted to make sure it was on. Other than the fact that now I think I'm hearing nothing but positive things about TOL operating the Redwoods Golf Course, and somebody has said, well, what about, why not put some flagpoles? So that's a good idea, and make sure they're done appropriately, where the middle one is a higher one. I don't have anything else to say other than that. Thank you.
Any other discussion on that amendment? I believe that says from Capital Projects Reserve.
That's right, Capital Projects Reserve.
Yeah. So seeing no discussion, I'll call the question on that amendment. That carries unanimously. Councillor Ferguson, you said it, you had another one?
I do, yeah.
Go ahead.
So, okay, and that again was distributed to the clerk. That the West Monday Creek Capital Project not proceed further with proposed funding available until a staff presentation to council on its current status, potential for the trail to reopen, and what the current carry forward and 2025 funding are able to achieve.
Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Bailey. Go ahead, Councillor Ferguson.
That I don't really have any
That's
more
good.
to say.
Any other discussion on that amendment? Councillor Pratt.
Just wondering what the funding total was for that project that's now being held.
I believe it's a little bit short to proceed, but I'm not really sure. I believe it has a carry forward of approximately 800,000 with additional funding in 2025 for 500,000. Is that correct, Ms. Ruff?
I believe you are correct. The 2025 funding was CPR, but the carry forward funding is grant.
Total, I think total carry forward was approximately 800 and something thousand.
It probably was at the time we pulled those numbers, but if there's been work done, that would have been reduced.
And if it's grant funding, are we at risk of losing that grant funding for this project?
Ms. Ruff, Mr. Rule.
Likely we would lose that funding.
So I believe that grant funding would have to go towards this project in some form. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Let's get a report quickly.
Yeah, so we'll call the question on that amendment. Oh, there's more speakers now. No. Okay, call the question on that amendment to E5. And that carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Okay, so I'm going to move on here. I have a couple of amendments as well. A couple simple ones. First one is that Brown Park asphalt shingle roof replacement be funded with $75,000 from the Facilities Renewal Reserve, seconded by Councillor Rint. Is there any discussion on that funding? Seeing none, call the question on that amendment to E5. That carries unanimously. And then I had a couple more that I think I would like to see funding. Hopefully council agrees. The first one is that the Walnut Grove, and I'll be moving these together, Ms. Ruff, these two together because they're related, that the Walnut Grove Community Center Fitness Center accessibility improvements be funded with $75,000 from the Facilities Renewal Reserve, and that the Aldergrove Community Center Fitness Center and washroom accessibility improvements be funded with $50,000 from the Facilities Renewal Reserve. So move. Seconded by Councillor Bailey. Is there any discussion on those two? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question on that amendment to E5. That carries unanimously. I had a third one, because quite important, that the Redwoods Golf Course culvert replacement be funded with $40,000 from the Capital Projects Reserve. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Rint. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, call the question on that amendment to E5. That carries unanimously. And then I have one more, that the two more, that the staff present or report to council on the range of potential options for the Fort Langley Cenotaph Rehabilitation Capital Project in time for council to have the option to approve any rehabilitation or other upgrades to be completed before Remembrance Day 2025. I so move. Seconded by Councillor Bailey. So in the capital project sheet, there is listed a Fort Langley Cenotaph Rehabilitation Capital Project. It's currently unfunded. I think it'd be appropriate for council to see a presentation on what that is and what the options are. Maybe there's a smaller project that can proceed. Mr. Rule, I believe in one of the previous, there was some potential damage found to the cenotaph. It may need some TLC.
Yes, that's correct. When we were doing some maintenance on it, there was some cracking and other deficiencies found.
And if you go down there and have a look at the lettering restoration, which I did, you can see some of the cracking that's vertical through the cenotaph. So I think it's appropriate to have council have a look at that and have a presentation from staff on something as important as our cenotaph in Fort Langley. Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, I understand this. A number of years ago, there was some improvement maybe to the placking. I'm not sure to the actual status. I was just wondering, I don't think it's more of a, I don't think there's a thing as a friendly amendment, more of a suggestion that staff may also want to discuss some things with the Legion as well.
Yeah.
So that was my point.
Yeah. Great. Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, I think there's not much more important than making sure that our Remembrance Day cenotaphs and other things associated with that are proper. Cracks, possibility of failure, none of those are an option in my opinion.
Yeah, and I agree. So with that, I'll call the question on that amendment. That carries unanimously. And I have one last one, that $1.75 million be transferred from the Public Works Equipment Reserve to the Capital Projects Reserve. That's seconded by Councillor Rint. Is there any discussion on that transfer of reserves? Seeing none, call the question on that amendment. That carries with Councillor Richter opposed. Councillor Martins, go ahead.
Thank you. Just speaking to one of the projects that remains unfunded, page 30 in my package. George Preston Recreation Center, arena, dasherboard, and panel replacement. It is a significant cost of $880,000. I note staff identify it as of high importance. And I would like to move for a staff presentation in 2025 with possible funding sources to be identified.
Okay, is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Richter. Is there any other discussion?
Yeah, so I see some confusion there as to the request for a presentation because of the amount. It's $880,000, so I would like to hear more from staff about it, why they categorize this as high. I personally have visited it, and they are right now taping over screws on the boards so that hockey jerseys don't get hooked up on the screws. So to me, it seems pretty significant, but I think it's important that all of council perhaps hear the same concerns, and then we can make a good decision about what we should do moving forward. So if anybody wants to go ahead with funding it, that would be great. I was just hoping to get it on the table, and that was why I recommended presentation.
Okay. Councillor Van Popta?
Yeah, I think this is sufficient to have a memo. I don't think we need to have a full presentation in respect to everybody's time.
Okay. Does see no other speakers, I'll call the question on that request for a presentation and the endorsement of the 5-year capital plan. Hold on, here's going to go. And that carries with Councillor Rent, Mayor Woodward, Councillor Van Popta opposed. Councillor Pratt?
And we're on the main.
We're back to the main motion as amended.
Okay, thank you. So just a few questions through yourself to staff, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
On the digital version of the report, it would be page 84. On the physical booklets, it's page 45, where it details recreation. I had a question through yourself to staff. I believe you mentioned it already this meeting, Your Worship, about the LEC subsidy. And I was just wondering if staff could provide a little bit more clarity as to what the LEC subsidy removal line item signifies, and then what the subsequent line item is, the LEC ice dry arenas for $1 million for the next couple of years, and then $750,000 subsequent years, what that is signifying.
Yeah, go ahead.
The removal of the subsidy relates to the portion of the subsidy we paid to them, which was an annual debt payment. So council approved to repay that debt earlier in 2024. So we can now, we don't have to make that payment. The $1 million, I believe, is to plan for the operations of the new ice and dry.
So we're preemptively building in the operations there, as in we anticipate it costing $1,075,000 or $7,500 moving forward in perpetuity, or is that just to sort of boost or beef up a reserve preemptively?
I believe in this case, we're looking at years 26, 27, 2029, and just trying to forecast potentially what operating costs could be. However, that needs to be a future discussion with council as we actually look at what the real numbers may be.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful on that one.
Yeah, just to clarify too, because I appreciate you raising it. This council, we endorsed redemption of the remaining non-NMFA debt on the Langley Events Center, which has reduced Universal by 1.3, which has offset other costs. So it's one of the reasons the budget is where it is because of this council redeeming debt that was costing property taxes. So.
Thank you. And I guess with the sort of preemptively amortizing the operating costs, for other facilities in the township that have user groups that go in, do those user groups offset these operating costs? Is that being anticipated here in these line items, or is this simply before we have any other exterior third-party user groups using the facilities that might be paying for them, this is what we anticipate it costing to operate?
Sorry, we're looking at each other. The answer to that question would be yes, Councillor Pratt. In each of those scenarios, sometimes user group revenues will offset these expenditures and it would be reflected in the revenue. However, as I'm quickly looking, I don't see it there, so I believe this would be a projected net number. However, normally when we go through the regular budget process in advance of these opening, we'll identify both revenues and expenses.
Okay, great. Thank you. Going back 3 pages on the physical booklet and a few pages in the digital one under police protection. For this year, the RCMP contract line item shows just over $3 million. And then for the subsequent 4 years, it varies between 1.3 and 1.7. Now, I understand that there's some unique circumstances why this year that figure is as high as it is. And I'm wondering if there are sort of any guarantees or any certainty moving forward over the next 4 years that we won't be seeing an adjustment of that size.
We get an update from the RCMP every year as they redo their budget, and we bring it into our budget.
So this $3 million for 2025, based on sort of conversations that have been had already, we anticipated it being $3 million last year, or we anticipated it being a high figure based on some negotiations, as I understand it?
Correct. They do give us some indicators, but a lot of times there's adjustments to that when
So-
we get to that year.
So there's no guarantee that next year it's going to be 1.3.
Correct.
Thank you. And the last question I had, page 133 of the booklet, 253 of the digital document, it identifies a covered skate park in Willoughby, so I appreciate seeing this on the list. And I'm just looking forward to trying to find a funding source. And so a memo instead of a presentation. Is that something that requires a notice of, or a motion here at this table to potentially identify a funding source for that project?
I mean, if you're looking for an update on what is being considered that generates the capital sheet in terms of a location and scope that leads to the quotation of cost, we could certainly, we've done that for one capital project already. If you wish to move for a presentation specific to that capital project, that seems fine.
I don't know if we, personally, I don't know if I need a presentation on that. Maybe
You could also just move for a memo, something specific on an item for information on a future agenda. We've done that. For
I'd
other
like to
capital-
move a motion to that effect.
Yeah, I'll second that. Is there any other discussion on a memo very specific to that project? No? Great. I'll call the question on that amendment. That carries on unanimously. Anything else, Councillor Pratt? That's it? Okay, Councillor Van Popte, go ahead.
I'd like to highlight page 182 in the capital booklet, which speaks to the Bedford Channel dredging item. Question to staff. I noticed that we've got earmarked $2.6 million that's required in 2025, 400 in 2027, and 400 in 2029. But I also noticed in the description that that further pricing would be complete. First round of surveys have been complete to develop a preliminary dredging plan and cost estimate, which will be refined after the second round of surveys scheduled for December 2024. So does this price include the second round of surveys from December, or is this cost, or is this 2.6 old?
Through your worship, yeah, that's correct. This costing is older from the fall and summer when we submitted the budget requests. So we don't have the results of the December survey yet, but we're understanding we'll have them in February, and we'll have a memo coming.
And do you have any idea of roughly how far off we are off this number?
That I can't say right now.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to confirm with staff too that you said earmarked. I think it's in there as a fundable project if council wishes to pay for it, but I believe there's an expectation that other levels of government are going to be providing this funding.
Well, I wouldn't, yeah, I mean, one can hope and try, but I do notice that it is labeled as critical in our estimates here, or as in terms of our ranking. So, yeah, I know I'll be working tough finding some money.
See, I think it'd be important for staff to confirm for council whether or not the City of Richmond, City of Surrey, City of Delta are expected to dredge the Fraser River.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
Yeah. Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I may, through the chair, I mean, first of all, a preamble that a number of us met with Kwantlen First Nation, and one of their major concerns was dredging. And I think that if we can, my first question to Mr. Rule is if you can work with or get some information from where we're going to proceed, and maybe you can have a sit down with a working group or something with, first of all, Kwantlen First Nation and Township of Langley and Metro Vancouver, where they have a park on the island, and of course, bringing in our provincial partners and see what we can do and how fast we can proceed, because there's a real concern by Kwantlen about losing fishing and other concerns in the area. If I may, Mr. Rule, are you able to comment at all?
Through your worship, yeah, we have been working with Kwantlen on this application and the dredging, and we will bring in the province and Metro eventually.
Okay, thank you very much. And it's important, you know, I think time is of the essence on this particular thing. And I know we're doing the best we can, but certainly if everybody chips in a bit more, maybe it will proceed the project quicker. Thank you.
Councillor Van Popte, did you have something else on dredging?
Yeah, I
go
just had
ahead.
a quick question in regards to that. Can we confirm when Kwantlen was able to finally submit the application for this?
I don't have that information with me. We will provide it in the memo.
Okay, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Councilor Martins?
Thank you. Bear with me. I'll just go through my questions here as quickly as I can. The first question I have is with regards to projects that were pre-approved for our 2025 budget. I'm thinking as an example, the RCMP main detachment project updates that were approved unanimously by council back in February 2024 for the gym, for some of their exterior security and their fencing. And so I know it's been pre-approved, but I couldn't find it in the package. If I could get some clarification on that, if there is a list somewhere, or quite likely I am missing it in the package.
Yeah, I believe it's under facilities, Ms. Ruff, as funded.
All pre-approvals were included in the carry-forward numbers, not to confuse what we were approving at the table. So that one particular project is on a list.
Thank you. Sorry, just to, for clarification, is there a list of those projects that have been pre-approved somewhere in this package? Or could I maybe get it?
Not in the package, but yes.
Yeah, okay, that would be great. And I'm very glad to hear that that is being funded. Thank you for that. My next question, if I can, again, for a point of clarification, in the staff report, so E5, page 5, there is a bar at the top here, a 5-year projection of proposed changes is as follows for core services, 25 through 29, proposed property tax revenue increases. So 2025 is 3.58%, and 2026 shows 17.24%. Just wonder if I can get some clarification on what that number is. I notice it says revenue. Do we anticipate a big surge in revenue next year? If you could provide some information.
Yeah, Ms. Ruff?
This is related to the tax increase that we would anticipate next year. Each year we look forward to see where we're heading. This increase is created mostly by the removal of the use of reserves to fund items this year. And we reevaluate each year as that year comes forward.
So if I could sort of confirm to you, Ms. Ruff, last year, the prediction for 2025 was 13%. Does that sound about right?
In that neighborhood, yes.
Yeah, and it ended up being 3.5 to plus the 0.9. So I think it's important to note that that staff lay that out in a certain way, but that each year it comes down to where we are today.
Yes, thank you. And I always enjoy seeing how we whittle away at that, and it's good. So that's, yeah, thank you. Same report, page 9. There is a chart that says Universal One-Time Project Description under Universal Services. And it says animal control from lapse, $200,000. Could I have some clarification on what that is referring to? Did we receive money back from lapse, or what's this about?
Ms. Ruff, am I correct, given the notice of motion from last year, finance is being proactive and setting aside some budget envelope for if council were to proceed with that?
That is correct.
Yeah. So it's just a budget envelope and it's still subject to council moving forward with that, which hasn't been confirmed at this point.
So it's really more of a placeholder then?
Yeah, it's very similar to, say, the contingencies, which are placeholders sitting over surplus.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate that clarification. And then the next clarification I have is, I noticed when I got into the actual package, there is in the capital budget on page 12, the draft budget, to clarify, there is an item called assets contributed from developers, and it's projecting 35 million each year for the 5-year plan. I hear different terms being mentioned. Of course, there's CACs, there's ACCs, there's all that kind of thing. Is this what this is? Is it CACs that we are anticipating an average of 35 million a year? Or is it something else?
Now, Ms. Ruff, correct me if I'm wrong, but those are specific to assets that are turned over from development. So when a developer constructs a sidewalk or a road in front of their development, that's turned over to the township and it has value. And so believe that's a placeholder for these assets to be turned over, which do require maintenance funding. Ms. Ruff, did I get that correct?
That is correct.
Yep.
Okay.
So it's a placeholder. It's just unknown how much the township receives each year.
Yeah, I get that. All right, no, awesome, thank you. Okay, and we're getting through this really quickly. And then in the operations budget, document, sorry, just flipping through here quickly. On page 23, there is a bar chart about regional cost RCMP. And then it's Langley RCMP authorized versus average actual strength. And I appreciate the numbers are a discrepancy. So we're paying for the authorized amount. And then for different reasons, the actual is always lower. Does this number include beyond hard vacancies? Is this also leaves for illness, maternity, parental, injured, that sort of thing? Or is it strictly the hard vacancies?
Yeah, Ms. Ruff?
So to clarify, we will pay on the actual. We budget on the authorized. I'm not entirely sure. I know it does include vacancies, but I'm not exactly sure how they break those out.
Okay, so I hate to use the word savings, because we're spending the money, but the difference between the two, where does that money go? Because we've set it aside in our budget. Does it go does it get held in the RCMP reserve, or how do we use those funds?
Ms. Ruff, I think we still, correct me if I'm wrong, that 50% of that overflow goes to the RCMP reserve and 50% goes to our operating surplus. Do I still have that right?
That is correct.
Yeah, and I think it's, I've also learned, looking at the RCMP rising costs that are putting so much pressure on the budget. Again, it's not anything to do with members, it's to do with the contract increases that a local government is having to absorb. That a significant quantity of the vacancy funding may end up being paid out as overtime. So just because you have a vacancy rate doesn't mean the funding's not consumed for policing hours. Ms. Ruff, do I have that as well, correct?
That is my understanding.
Yeah, so while we see that vacancy gap of up to 20 officers, I believe some of that funding ends up going to overtime.
Okay, do we have an idea of how much of that gets absorbed by the overtime?
Ms. Ruff, do we have that?
No, I don't get a lot of detail on the staffing costs.
Fair enough. I hear what you're saying. And then my final question is only, so I do know that we've had this expense come forward from Ottawa with regards to the RCMP contracts. When were we aware of the amount we were going to have to pay for 2024? Is that something we only find out somewhere in the year, or do we already know what's happening for 2025?
So they run on a March year end, so before they do their budget, we would get notification that we roll into ours. But we did have some indication probably last September, I think we started working on some of these issues.
Last September
For this coming year.
2024?
Yes.
Okay. And I guess what I'm wondering is, so we do have an RCMP reserve that could assist with some of these costs, but I do notice, like in the last year, we have taken funds from that reserve for non-RCMP projects. For example, we voted on a 5-year project, or a 5-year capital plan to replace the fire trucks, which are much needed. And in doing so, $2 million was pulled from the RCMP reserve towards that cost. So when I'm looking at it now, a property tax increase, and it's kind of being suggested it's all because of this RCMP contract. Part of it is where we're moving the money, to be fair. So I'm not opposed to fire trucks. We need fire trucks. I noticed that was one of the funding sources, was $2 million from the RCMP reserve, and I think that should be noted. And they're all tough decisions that we have to make. These are all things that are important, but maybe it's a bit unfair to suggest it's all because of that contract when we had money available and chose to use it on something else. That would just be my comment.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have to respond to that. So what we may have to get a memo to council, Mr. Cooner, to outline that. The money was used from the RCMP reserve because of its high balance. In the 2024 budget, council corrected the chronic underfunding for fire apparatus equipment by doubling the base budget transfer from 1.5 to just around 3 million. The multi-year order for fire apparatus saved the taxpayers millions and resulted in additional apparatus. It also locked in pricing, now no longer subject to currency fluctuations, which we're now seeing, no longer subject to the long lead times for apparatus that other departments are doing. So while there may be some who are using that for what they're doing, it was a great opportunity for taxpayers under this council to lock in apparatus for multiple years at a set cost. Now, the RCMP reserve, given its balance, was used to purchase those multi-year trucks, but it's being put back in future years. Ms. Ruff, could you confirm that?
The amount should be returned to the policing reserve this year.
So I think to say that it's been taken from that reserve to use for fire trucks just isn't factual. That's not what's occurring. It's being put back. And so I think that it was a great use of that reserve because there's money in there for that capital project, which takes multiple years to get in place because of our CMP processes. And in the interim, that funding was used to secure fire apparatus equipment to keep taxpayers safe. So that money was in the RCMP reserve and is being put back into the RCMP reserve for policing. So to say that police funding was used to buy fire trucks just isn't accurate. Councilor Barnes?
Okay. It was RCMP reserve of 2 million that was transferred to purchase the fire trucks, and I understand that it's going to be paid back with interest when I read the report, but that is factual. And we're now looking at part of our potential increase in property taxes is to pay for the RCMP contract. So we knew about that expense and we had reserve funds. That is only my point. I want to be clear that I in no way think that we should not purchase fire trucks. We need them, and I understand the renewal of a fleet and how important that is, and it's critical and important to the safety of our residents to ensure that our fire departments are adequately resourced. So it's just an observation. It could be suggested that the increase is split between the two. Yes, we had to pay to the RCMP, but we did have 2 million available. That's all.
Yeah, so there's, it's important to highlight the difference between capital and operating. So the contract increases that are resulting in the RCMP number of over 2% in a single year is an operating number, and the RCMP reserve is a capital reserve. So there's no way of using that reserve to indefinitely escape the increases coming from Ottawa.
All right, no, and I thank you. I appreciate that clarification. So the RCMP reserve can ever be used for these extra expenses coming from Ottawa because it's not a capital item. Is that what I'm understanding?
It could be used to smooth out the increases to edge them into the budget, but it cannot be used to indefinitely postpone them.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kunst?
Yeah, thank you. In the past, we'd always have a special meeting dedicated to the operating budget, maybe another one for the capital. So are we going to have one of those meetings?
Mr. Cooner? I believe this is the budget deliberation.
Through your worship to Councillor Kunz, that is correct. Or as his worship has stated, this is the presentation of the budget here. We are seeking council's endorsement of it, and then the draft bylaws will be brought forward at the subsequent meeting.
Okay, so there's a lot to cover here. It's a huge budget, and there's a lot of little details. I guess we could spend a lot of time on. I did have one question here, and it's on E5, page 3, operating efficiencies and cost cutting. A review of departmental budgets was undertaken by staff, resulting in efficiencies and cost savings with no impact on services, to the tune of, I believe it's 1.25 million. So do we know what some of those efficiencies were? And I know this is minutia, but it's, kind of.
Through your worship to Councillor Kunst, the mention of operating efficiency and cost cutting was staff at a senior management level took a holistic approach to several departments to see if there's any redundancy in the programs or any efficiencies within with still maintaining a certain level of service quality to the residents. The mention of the 1.25 million, that is a forward-looking number. That is not the exact operating efficiency and cost cutting. That is moving forward. We will still look at further operating efficiencies within the departments and also in other areas such as review of fleet requirements to potentially look at further reductions of 1.25 million.
Also, there's the Recycle BC program. It looks like we're an increase of 1.1 million. Do we know why that is such an increase this year?
Your worship, the Recycle BC program undertook a rate adjustment, and with the new contract that we signed this year or agreement, there was additional revenue of 1.1 million.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Richter?
Yes, so I just want to clarify, because I actually had the same question as Councillor Kunst, and that is, were we going to have a budget workshop? Because this is the first that I've seen the budget, and it came to us on Thursday at 2:30 p.m. So if this is the budget presentation, if we look at the report on page 4 and 5, what approving this motion is doing is essentially endorsing a 3.58 core services property tax change plus a 0.92 infrastructure renewal property tax creation for a total impact of 4.5% overall. Is that correct?
Mr. Coonan?
That is the universal services increase.
What, 4.5%?
Correct.
Except that we're now going to divide it into two separate numbers. Is that correct? Or when we go out to the public, are we going to say the tax increase for this year is 4.5%?
So we were trying to delineate between what was going towards our ongoing preservation of assets versus the actual operating costs.
Okay, so when we go, because part of this motion is directing staff to undertake public consultation, so what is staff planning to tell the public?
We post all of the documents that you have before you online, so they will get the same information.
Will there be an open house that the public can attend?
Your worship to Councillor Richter, the public consultation will be conducted via online through surveys. That's historically been the past practice, and that has resulted in more engagement from residents. There's still opportunities for residents to email in as well to express support or their concerns in relation to the budget.
Thank you.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know we're getting close to questions and answered. I know that that we have been preparing the staff, and I want to compliment staff who have been working on the budget. It's not easy with changes. Well, I guess probably public doesn't know, we don't have a lot of control over RCMP increases. They just basically send us the invoice and we pay it accordingly. And it's a challenge, but I mean, that's just the way it's been set up. I did want to compliment staff again. I know that whenever we get a package from the staff, we get it on the Thursday, and I guess we make the decision on the weekend. The staff are available by email, by telephone, and perhaps even text message. I'm not sure how other councillors do, but over the years, what I've always done, even prior to the budget, I've sat down and looked at what's important for police, fire, what's important for operating both capital as well. And I make a point out of phoning or emailing staff and sometimes preparing a meeting to go in and talk to them. And I think that's never changed. And I think, if I may, through the chair, to Mr. Cooner and staff, you're always available to answer questions via whatever source available, if I may.
Your worship, Councillor Ferguson, that is correct.
So I just wanted to comment, Mr. Mayor, that that's certainly been my strategy over the years. And I know if I'm a big, huge facility user. I know if I'm at W.C. Blair using their pool, or Walnut Grove using their pool, or whether I'm at the McLeod Athletic Park, anything, you know, I'm always asking questions on recreation. I ask questions to the engineering department regarding how we're making out. We had that atmospheric river not too long ago within the reports today, and I ask about that. And the roads, we've got 500 to 800 kilometers of roads. So, I mean, it's always open to any council member that just wants to ask a question. What is happening in our community, and how can we proceed accordingly with the budget? And I'm convinced that we're served well by staff, and I wanted to compliment them for all the questions they've answered for me and all the time they spent. It's hours and hours of time they've spent with me. And even last week, I went for a site visitation with staff, quite a few hours. So I wanted to say, Mr. Mayor, thank you for the staff for all the work they've done. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, I just, not being a CPA or anything like that, I appreciate the fact that the way this is broken out right now, one of the most important focuses of council is safety of the public. And with this breakout of RCMP, fire, and bylaw costs, and seeing that this is a huge part of the budget increase, I really appreciate that, and making it easy for an old guy like me to understand how much we're putting towards public safety and making sure our residents are safer.
Councillor Pratt?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. In this budget, there's a proposed $500,000 contribution to the Library Reserve Fund in anticipation of future library infrastructure. And I was curious, through yourself to staff, is that a single library that we've discussed at this table, or is there two libraries that are anticipated to be able to be taking funds from that reserve?
Ms. Ruff?
Playing the guessing game here. Through your worship to Councillor Pratt, the funds are transferred to the contributed to the Library Reserve Fund, and then it's just depending on what project is approved, or multiple sources may be able to obtain the funds from that.
Thank you, and honestly, I'm pleased to see just how, in my opinion, good the value for money of being a part of the FVRL system is, in that for such a significant contribution to the reserve, the monthly cost of that is 81 cents. And I think that's a pretty good value for money. So I just want to say I appreciate the work that staff has done to deliver this budget this year, and I look forward to taking it to the public.
Yeah, I appreciate you raising that. I think it's important to highlight that this council's been working on having a library reserve to build new libraries. And that starts with a new library for Aldergrove, which this council has endorsed placing in downtown Aldergrove. And I believe the upcoming, eventually, at some point, library for Willoughby, and having these reserves in place to construct that library and support that library in the years ahead, rather than rent it. Right, and I believe that that's been a critical decision here, to build facilities, not rent them. I see no other speakers here, so I want to thank staff for this endorsement. This proposal for endorsement in terms of a budget. Mr. Cooner, I want to congratulate the staff, including yourself, again for working hard on all the efficiencies that are summarized here that resulted in core municipal services going down. When's the last time we saw a minus number in property taxes for core municipal services, minus 0.4%? And I think that prioritizes the reviews that we're doing, reviews that staff are doing, to continue to find efficiencies to increase service levels and maintain property taxes relatable to inflation. And to see RCMP at 2%, fire at 1.5%, bylaw enforcement at 0.33%, 3.5%, what that actually means is public safety service level improvements are 88% of the 4.5. So we're prioritizing the expansion of protective services in those three categories to do significant improvements for public safety in our community, starting with fire, RCMP, and bylaw enforcement, like I don't think we've seen here in a long, long time. And I'm very proud to see that. I think it's great to see infrastructure renewal. People can very clear where their property tax money is going to public safety and to infrastructure renewal. It's not going to, say, other municipalities, maybe neighboring us, where their corporate administration is going up by 30% prorated to population. And so other municipalities maybe aren't doing the work that we're doing. And I'm very proud that staff have presented us with something like this. I can really appreciate the amount of time it took to put this together. And I really very much appreciate Mr. Cooner and Ms. Ruff and all your staff's work on bringing together what I did refer to as the best budget I've seen in 6 years on council here. So again, thank you very much. Is there any other discussion on the proposed budget? Seeing none, call the question on E5 as amended. That carries with Councillor Richter opposed. So we'll move on to item F1, bylaws for first and second reading, official community plan amendment, rezoning application number 100236, bylaw number 6097-6098. Moved by Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Bailey. Is there any discussion on F1? Seeing none, I'll call the question on F1. That carries with Councillor Richter opposed. Item F2, official community plan amendment, rezoning application number 100267, bylaw number 6093-6094. Moved by Councillor Rint, seconded by Councillor Bailey. Councillor Pratt, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And I just want to confirm through yourself to staff that to the immediate west of this project site, council, I believe this council has approved a townhouse development. To the north, I believe there is an applied for townhouse development, and correct me if I'm wrong if that's already been approved as well. And then immediately east across the street, there's another townhouse site applied for, and on the south side, there's townhouses built. And this applicant is proposing to amend to 4-story apartments. Can you just confirm if those neighboring uses are correct?
Through your worship to Councillor Pratt, correct.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no other discussion, I'll call the question on F2. That carries unanimously. H1, bylaws at consideration at third reading, official community plan amendment, rezoning application number 100256, bylaw number 6069-6067. Does anybody wish to move the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Bailey, seconded by Councillor Rint. Is there any discussion on H1? Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, at the appropriate time, I'd like to move a referral.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that the application be referred back to staff to report to council on alternative development options, given its significant access constraints, and to review the possibility and merits of its preservation for future development and interim uses for council's consideration.
There's a second, seconded by Councillor Rint. Councillor Bailey, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm moving that because I don't want to close the door on this. I think we have to look at all the possible ways we can see just exactly what this can be used for. To outright refuse it, I don't think would be fair at this stage. I think we want to have a look at every possibility we can.
All right, Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, I think I can't believe I'm agreeing with Councillor Bailey, but if I may, I do agree it's important to look at this again. Folks spend an awful lot of time, energy, and effort into putting projects forward before staff, and I think this one, we look at it, it is a challenge, and perhaps they can sit down and work something out to get in and out of the site. That was something that came up quite a bit from the public hearing, so I appreciate the comments made by Councillor Bailey, and I agree that it's important to move forward. I'm in favor of this.
Councillor Martins.
Thank you. And if I can, through the chair to the mover, so in referring this back to staff, excuse me, it's then still on the table that, not our table, but with staff, that it could be considered for commercial use again with the existing zoning?
I want to look at all possibilities.
I think the existing zoning is still there, Mr. Cooner. That's an option at any time.
That is correct, Your Worship. Staff's interpretation at this time is that essentially would consider all options, including the underlying zoning, any other potential amendments, and adjacent zonings that may be taken into consideration for the best use that staff advise council.
Thank you. So when it comes back, would it trigger another public hearing if there's a new plan, or if it's commercial, it doesn't require it?
Through Your Worship, to Council Martins, it would depend on what the use is being proposed. In the event that the use being proposed requires a plan amendment, then we would trigger a further public hearing. In the event the use being proposed is plan compliant, that would not trigger a further public hearing.
Thank you. And I want to thank the mover for this. I appreciate the spirit of why you're referring it back to staff, and I support this.
Councillor Kunst?
Does that include just, or is it even possible to just put a gap in the barrier? Is that a possibility? Is that on the table?
To Your Worship, to Councillor Kunz, staff could take a holistic approach right now. The motion itself speaks to just land use. We would be looking at land use options, but we would also look at transportation as well to see, taking into consideration the site constraints due to access, ingress and egress.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no other discussion, I'll call the question on the referral. That carries unanimously. H2, official community plan amendment. No, official community plan amendment, rezoning application number 100296, bylaw number 6086-6087. Moved by Councillor Rent, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Is there any discussion on H2? Seeing none, call the question on H2. That carries unanimously. Bylaws for final adoption, I-1, 212 Civic Infrastructure Loan Authorization Bylaw, bylaw number 6054. I'll move it, seconded by Councillor Rent. Is there any discussion on I-1? Seeing none, call the question on I-1. That carries with Councillor Richter, Councillor Kunst opposed. I-2, 208A, Civic Infrastructure Loan Authorization Bylaw, bylaw number 6053. I'll move it, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Is there any discussion on I-2? Seeing none, call the question on I-2. That carries. Councillor Richter, Councillor Kunst opposed. I-3, Smith Neighborhood Stormworks Loan Authorization Bylaw, bylaw number 6052. I'll move it, seconded by Councillor Bailey. Is there any discussion on I-3? Seeing none, I'll call the question on I-3. That carries with Councillor Richter, Councillor Kunst opposed. Mayor and council report. Does anybody wish to make a report? Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, there's a few things that I want to draw to everyone's attention. 80 years ago, a very important humanitarian effort took place, and that is the freedom of Auschwitz concentration camp. I think unless we remember things like this, it gives voice to the people who are deniers. I have toured Dachau and I have toured Auschwitz, and these are things that I believe strongly should be brought to everyone's attention. Even though it's not a civic thing, it affects everyone, I believe. Another date I'd like to draw to everyone's attention is February the 22nd at 4 p.m. is Coldest Night of the Year walk. That is in support of those that are unhoused right now. It's at the Gateway of Hope, and it would be great to see lots of people showing up at that event. I know I haven't missed one of those since they began, not at Gateway, but Coldest Night, and they are great events to support. And on February the 4th is Chook Tuesday, which is the International Day of Awareness for Homelessness. Keep that in your mind, as there's a possibility of snow that day, and think of the people that are on the street. That is what that UN Declaration Day is all about. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to make a report? Councillor Ferguson?
Yes, thank you. Last Monday, myself and a number of councillors had the privilege of meeting with Kwantlen First Nation and Chief Marilyn Gabriel. A very, very interesting discussion we had. And of course, the concept we talked about earlier about dredging came up. And of course, we know, I'm not sure if it's announcement been made on February the 8th, the opening of Salus in Place. We've been waiting a number of years, so they'll be involved in an artifact that's 3,500 years old, some kind of a bowl, very, very important to the Kwantlen First Nation, will be stored in our museum as well. So very, very positive things happening there. And today I had the privilege of walking through and having a multi-hour discussion with Metro and the North Shore Liquid Waste Plant, and it's all over the media, as we all know, but it's proceeding. The engineering is proceeding. The 1,500 deficiencies are almost all resolved, and they're working very, very hard. In fact, believe it or not, despite the fact that it's in the media a lot, with the pump station, which is further down underneath the Lionsgate Bridge, won an award for being on time, on budget, and excellently designed by an engineer, so won an award for that as well. And I did want to say that I was given an edict today by Major Ian Newby from the Regular Forces. He's been involved with I guess, with service Canadian Armed Forces for a number of years, and he did indicate to me that last week was Robert Burns Day, and Robert Burns, for those of you who don't know, he was the poet for Scotland, and he wrote the song Auld Lang Syne, and Major Newby reminded me to tell council, some hae meat but canna eat, and some what meat that have it. But we hae meat and we can eat, and praise the Lord we thank it. And that's a Scottish song. Thank you, Mr. Report.
All right. Any other report? Great. Seeing none, move on to L1. Just wanted to highlight that this was released from closed meeting by council. It clearly indicates that the decision to initiate a deintegration with the City of Langley was carried unanimously by council. I'd like to also highlight any questions, items M1 through 6. Any members of council? Councillor Kunst, go ahead.
Yeah, I just drove past the airport the other day, and this is in regards to M3 with the relocation of the DC-3. And whoever was involved in that's just a fantastic placement for that airplane on the backdrop with the pilots in the back. So I just wanted to highlight that. If you get a chance to drive by, seems like the perfect spot. So just wanted to say that.
Thanks. Any other questions on M1 through 6? Councillor Martins?
Yeah, thank you. It's actually along the same line, and I echo Councillor Kuntz's comments. It looks really cool, and I did actually drive by when they were doing their relocation under the cloak of night. And what I wanted to ask, so I noticed in the memo that the new location is an interim location next to the terminal building. I'm wondering if I could just get a bit more information on why it's interim, what the long-term plan is.
To your worship, to Councillor Martins, it's an interim plan due to the fact that we would like to have the aircraft at a permanent locations with no concerns with NAV Canada. NAV Canada is still going to assess this location, even though it's preliminary approved, to see if there's any safety concerns. And moving forward, we would have a location that is more permanent in nature and that has no concerns with NAV Canada.
I believe also, Mr. Cooner, it's the possibility that the Canadian Museum of Flight is moving to Pitt Meadows, and perhaps that we're not sure if this plane goes with them or not.
Fair.
Yeah.
And sorry, and just if I can for follow-up on that. So so we're waiting on NAV Canada. If they determine that this is a suitable location, will it stay put, and unless, of course, it relocates to Pitt Meadows, or is there another location in Langley being considered?
To your worship, to Councillor Martins, so NAV Canada's doesn't have a concern, but they do monitor the situation. It's an ongoing, as the previous location was not a concern initially, but then after further monitoring, they had noted that there's regulatory issues with the proximity of it to their weather instruments, et cetera. So that's the reason we do also label it interim as well, just to monitor the situation to ensure that there's no issues in the proximity of any of the weather instrument tools or any other concerns in relation to ascending or descending flights as well.
Councillor Kunst?
Yeah, this is in relation to the emergency treatment fund that we didn't get. Do we know if that will have any impact on our community action teams in the township? Just as a side, Councillor Pratt and I went to a workshop on Friday and met with some of the community action teams. So I hadn't seen this yet, so I was just wondering if this might have an impact on what they do.
Through your worship, no, this shouldn't have an impact on their existing operations. This was an enhancement to what the bylaws teams do.
Okay. Oh, right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, it must be my Scottish heritage coming through. James Douglas, as we know, was a Scots, first born in Scotland. Anyway, the Goonie Bird, the DC-3, the Douglas DC-3, it's a commercial airliner we adapted into a military transport airport during World War II. The military version of the DC-3 is known as the C-47 Sky Train. Interesting. Thank you.
Move on to N1. Does anybody wish to move? I guess it's deferred, so it's back on the floor automatically. So is there any other discussion on N1? Let's see. Oh, Councillor Pratt.
I suppose I'm just rereading the motion as written. Since it's including the creation of a role, I would be curious to know if council would entertain a motion to receive a memo similar to previous motion this meeting about a memo concerning the skate park, just about what potential costs might be, detailing the role in greater detail, and where that funding source might be. Obviously, it's universal for staff, but
You can certainly refer this for a memo to have staff weigh in briefly on items 1 to 3.
I'd like that.
Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Martins. Is there any, we should discuss it further?
Nope.
Request? Is there any other discussion on the request for the memo of N1? No, call the question on the referral for a memo of N1. And that's carries with Councillor Rint, Mayor Woodward, Councillor Van Popta opposed. Let's move on to other business. 01, I'll move that. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rint. Is there any other discussion? Any discussion on 01? Seeing none, call the question on 01. That carries unanimously. I'll move 02, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Is there any discussion on 02? Seeing none, call the question on 02. That carries unanimously. Councillor Richter, 03.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. There have been some changes to the whereases that I need to read into the public record. I submitted this notice of motion on Wednesday, and since Thursday, there have been changes that occurred. So the motion, the whereases 1, 2, and 3 stand as is. Number 4 changes to as of 11:30 a.m. on Wednesday, January 22nd, 2025, which is the time that this notice of motion was submitted per the deadline specified in the Township of Langley Council Procedure Bylaw. Council had not had a 2025 budget workshop nor received a draft 2025 budget and 5-year financial plan, despite repeated requests from various council members for complete budget 2025 information. Number 5, the mayor of the Township of Langley publicly announced on Thursday, January 23rd, 2025 at the Langley Chamber of Commerce local government reception at 7:36 p.m. that the 2025 TOL property tax increase would be 3.5% plus 0.9% for infrastructure, yet Township Council as a whole had not seen, discussed, or even voted on this. And whereas number 6, as a consequence, the current Langley Township Council does not have 1, a replacement for the above-mentioned rescinded budget policy, 2, a 2025 budget workshop in any form, 3, a publicly discussed or council resolution endorsed draft 2025 Township of Langley TOL budget and 5-year financial plan by January 22nd, 2025, and 4, all individual members have not been afforded the full, fair, and equal opportunity to exercise their complete and proper financial fiduciary due diligence under provincial law, especially as the proposed 2025 TOL budget appeared on the January 27th, 2025 council agenda at 2:31 p.m. on January 23rd, 2025 for resolution disposition 5 days later on January 27th, 2025. The resolutions, and there are 2 there, stand as originally submitted. I so move.
Is there a seconder to this? Seconded by Councillor Kunst. Is there any other discussion? Councillor Richter, do you wish to discuss it further?
It seems to be a popular phrase that is used fairly often. I think the motion speaks for itself.
Okay, Councillor Van Popta, go ahead.
So regarding the whereas 0.5, I was at that event. And it was as it's not a bylaw yet, obviously it's not, it was not proposed as a 3.5. I even remember reference to the draft budget that was presented by the Langley City Council. So I believe that 0.5 is actually factually incorrect. As for item 6.3, we just did that, which is a publicly discussed or council resolution endorsed draft. So we just endorsed the draft and we did have a discussion regarding it. And in terms of item 6.4, I did my fiduciary responsibilities. I'll note that the budget was 296 pages. Our council package without the draft budget was 564 pages, which was 860 pages that we read this weekend in the past 4 days, which is part of our council job as being councillors, is every Thursday we get a package and we read those packages over the weekend, we make our notes. July 2023, the council package was 1,967 pages, and in July 2024, our council package was 1,096 pages, and nobody there said that they couldn't do their responsibilities as a councillor. So with a council package of 860 pages, I do believe we all had adequate time to go line by line through this report and to make our notes and to bring it here to this council table, which I believe many of us here have. I know Councillor Martins had some ideas. Councillor Pratt had some ideas. I believe Councillor Kunst as well. So we've all had an opportunity to present our budget changes that we wanted to put forward, and there's still another couple opportunities when it becomes a bylaw to make more changes. So I do believe that we've had our fiduciary due diligence that we were able to do, and I find that this motion is just grandstanding and is unnecessary.
Councillor Martins.
Thank you. I want the record to reflect that my support of this motion has no bearing on the good work of the people in the hall. This is not a criticism directed at staff, and I am constrained and cannot say more.
Yeah, so it's interesting. The whereas, I understand, Councillor Ferguson, I'll come to you. Yeah, council instructions to staff in compliance with the Township of Langley. The whereases seem to suggest that council members have not been afforded a fair and equal opportunity to exercise their full and proper financial fiduciary due diligence under provincial law. That process is provided by the staff, Councillor Martins.
As I said, I am constrained and I cannot speak further.
So to me, number 5 clearly suggests that corporate officers are not following provincial law, and it's been seconded. Number 6 seems to also suggest that a required process is not being followed by the staff as presented by council, and it's asking the Minister of Municipal Affairs to come in and sort out this apparent egregious process, not following provincial law as mentioned under item 6, 5, or 6, I think. Again, this is just been changed on me, so yeah. So I think to make the statement that this is not directed at the staff, I think it's pretty obvious what that's about. Councillor Bailey, go ahead.
Seeing that this came forward, and I have a little bit of training in financial affairs and not a lot, when I got this package a little later on Thursday, I dedicated this weekend to diving into it. I believe that's my job. That's what I'm supposed to do. And coming from a background of trade unionism, I look at language a little different. And when I see that 6.4, not affording fair and equal opportunity, I find that is pretty offensive, headed towards the staff, because it's staff that puts this forward. I know I went and asked some questions about the budget and that kind of stuff, and I did my fiduciary responsibility, and I had adequate time, even with everything else that was going on in my life, to go through these budgets and to even make a recommendation on it. I don't propose that I am any great financial wizard, but I did understand, and I actually appreciated the way that it was put forward. So I really, really have a tough time with this wording, especially of Part 6 as I see it being pointed at our staff, and I am very hesitant to give that any credence whatsoever.
I kind of agree, Councillor Bailey. Mr. Cooner, I'm reading this again here, asking for a request to go out, but not saying who makes the request, not sure if it's council or staff. Minister of Municipal Affairs to audit governance, council instructions, staff, in compliance with reporting cycles, with provincial legislative and policy requirements. So, Mr. Cooner, do you have any concern that provincial legislative requirements and policy requirements have not been met with the budget process?
Your Worship, in relation to the budget process or report, specifically E5, staff had complied with the Local Government Act and Community Charter and presented the draft or sought draft endorsement of council, and will be presenting the bylaws in accordance with Local Government and Community Charter.
So you've presented a draft budget that's not in a bylaw form, so it can be amended and changed. It could be deferred. Nobody moved deferral. Nobody moved for a presentation, unless I missed it, which I didn't. Nobody's moved for any additional information to be provided that I've heard, to be provided before or during when the bylaw comes forward on the 3rd, presumably, maybe on the 23rd, depending on the timing. So I'm not really following this suggestion that provincial legislative and policy requirements have not been met. And I think that's a pretty significant accusation directed at the staff. I think that's pretty clear what that is. At least that's how I see it. And I'll be further resolved that the Minister of Municipal Affairs be directed to direct the inspector under local law to facilitate and oversee a foresaid audit. So I'm not following that either. Given Mr. Cooner, Ms. Ruff, you provide audited statements to the province, do you not?
That is correct.
So every municipality in the province, including this one, is audited by independent third party, and those audited statements are provided to the province?
That is correct, Your Worship.
Councillor Kunst?
Yeah, I would just echo Councillor Martin's. This is not directed at the staff. and I can't comment any further.
Yeah, so saying it's not directed at the staff may be up to someone else to determine. Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, well, I can comment because I was elected to report to the people as to what it is we do here. Perhaps the mover would have been better off not to make any changes here for the whereases 1 to 5 and puts these new changes, which actually I'll comment on. The actual motion part confuses me a bit, but my question through the chair on whereas item number 5, if I may, I guess to the clerk, do we no longer send out the agendas on Thursday?
The agendas are sent out on Thursday afternoon as soon as we complete them.
Okay, that's the written, how about the internet, the computer agenda? When does that come out?
About the same time. We
About the
get
same
them
time.
out just about the same time. The
So-
electronic and the paper come out
So
about the same
if
time.
I was to say that the item number 5 here, that the mayor made, in his wisdom, made a statement at 7:36 p.m., would we not have had these agendas in our, both the capital budget and the operating budgets in our hands by 7:30 on Thursday evening?
I can confirm they went out prior to 3 o'clock on
So,
Thursday.
thank you very much, and I appreciate all the work you and your team do. You guys are hardworking. That is a statement here made is kind of, as others have said, is a direct criticism of our staff not delivering the agendas. I read that agenda. I knew what the numbers would be. In fact, I had a prediction myself because I was doing my own work. I thought it was going to be somewhere between 4.9 and 4.95. I was wrong. So I read the agenda, and the mayor allegedly says, well, he did say that, but he said we still have to vote on it. The council has to vote on these things. So anybody could say, well, I hope the agenda and the budget comes in at 4.9%, but it's up to council to vote on it. Very disturbing reading this, and we have a responsibility of due diligence to respect our staff and respect the work they do. And also at the same time, if they do make a mistake, to let them know as politely and professionally as we can. It just certainly doesn't make much sense in the sense of the therefores, asking the Minister of Municipal Affairs to, I guess, go over what the staff has prepared and already done. So I'm very, very disappointed by this motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Ferguson. Item number 5, to confirm, received an email. I think I saw it somewhere around 3 p.m. on the Thursday. The agenda was placed on our OneDrives around that time, and I spent 2 or 3 hours leading up to that event, which is a pretty normal event annually, reviewing and preparing for Monday. I had read the budget submission in draft form, and I think it was fairly obvious that it had not been approved by council yet and was a proposal. Again, I'll have some closing remarks on what this is really about. Councillor Pratt, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'm sure a lot of us do, but especially, I guess, me. I get asked a lot if council is a full-time job. And for myself, I treat it, especially at the start of this term when I was learning as much as I was and getting my feet wet, I did treat it as more than a full-time job. And I know for myself, between 1 and 4 p.m. on a Thursday before a council meeting, I'm sitting there with bated breath, awaiting to see how many pages the agenda is going to be so that I can make an Instagram post about how long it is. And so for myself, I read clause 6 of the whereas where it specifies at 2:31 p.m. on the 23rd when the agenda, I'm assuming the email was sent out indicating that the agenda was now uploaded on the OneDrive. And so I was, again, to Councillor Bailey's point, preparing myself this weekend to spend the entire time going through the budget and going to our staff with any questions that I had. But even before that, going back last month, the month before, knowing that the budget process was coming up, that our staff were clearly working on things, wanting to get ahead of that, asking specific questions about certain things that might be in the budget, so that when it came time to having this discussion today, whenever that discussion came up, I either had only questions I couldn't have had answered before, or I had new questions, something that had come up over the weekend. So I also, quite frankly, am troubled by that line in section 6 about full, fair, and equal opportunity, because we all have the same opportunity to read the agenda that we get on Thursday and also ask preemptive questions about things that we anticipate might come up, so that we can be comfortable with any decisions we make. So to Councillor Ferguson's point, seeing these changes on the fly here is a little bit more concerning than even the motion was beforehand. So I appreciate the conversation. It's obviously an important one, but I look forward to the vote on this one.
Councillor Richter?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, and I want to reiterate the comments of both Councillor Martins and Councillor Kunst. In no way is this motion a reflection on staff. Staff do what they're told to do, and they do a very good job at what they're doing. This is a reflection on council process and the fact that in previous years, council has always had at least a 2-month period where we've worked with the budget in workshops in different pieces. There's been council priority meetings that have been open to the public where these discussions have occurred. That did not happen this time around. And that, I think, is wrong. And it's not because staff changed it, it's because council changed it. So I think that it's only prudent that the Minister of Municipal Affairs, and we report to the provincial government, come in and take a look at the situation. Is there something happening here that shouldn't be happening? That's what this motion is asking for. It is not pointing a finger at the staff in any way, shape, or form. And as to item number 5, on the changes that I've just read in, I have a recording of what the mayor said at 7:36 p.m. on January 23rd. And quite frankly, that was the first I had heard of it. That we were looking at at that point it looked like a 4.4, but today, as we have discovered, it is ultimately a 4.5% tax increase. So I would like the provincial government to take a look at how this council is operating, and if we're doing something wrong, to let us know and get it changed. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm going to address that again. Item number 5, again, I think just for people's information, there are some members of council who receive their agenda in paper form, and there's some that receive it in digital form. Those that get it in paper form have it couriered to them, may not see it until when they pick it up at their doorstep or however it's delivered to them. I get it on my OneDrive, and I'm sitting at my desk all day, every day, in my office working. And so when I got the email, I went and looked at the budget. So I think, again, I'll have some closing remarks on what I think this is really about. Councillor Van Popta, go ahead.
When I ran for council, part of the reason I ran was to find efficiencies and to do processes better. And we've been fairly successful at this table in finding efficiencies. Some of those efficiencies is in how we operate meetings and policies that have resulted in an extensive amount of hand-holding of councillors. I've even comments regarding not having amendments put up on the screen. I sat in this audience here for 11 years and never, ever, ever saw the amount of amendments being pre-delivered to staff so that it could be displayed so that we could read it ahead of time. most often amendments are made on the fly, and we don't have the luxury of having them recorded. But that aside, part of the efficiencies of running meetings are our presentations and the amount of time that we were spending on presentations of budget when we could do that work at home as part of our job. And there seems to be a resistance with certain members that they just don't want to advance with the times as we move to become a bigger municipality. We don't have the luxury of doing a lot of items, or nor should we. We can do this work on our own. We do not need to have hours upon hours of presentations on the budget. I used to sit in that audience and it would be like 3 or 4 meetings of presentations on the budget. And I don't think that we're in a place now where we need to be doing that when we could do the work ourselves at home.
Councillor Pratt?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'm trying to find it in a previous agenda, but maybe yourself or staff can confirm when the motion to change the budget process for this year was on the agenda and passed. Was it December, the first meeting of December?
Mr. Cooner, do you recall? I believe we had to look at the schedule outlined in the directives because of North Shore Wastewater Treatment Plant and the voluntary residential metering program. The schedule couldn't be met. Mr. Cooner, do you remember when that was realized and rectified?
My understanding is, Your Worship, that we had the council policy that was created, I believe, September 2023, and it was rescinded November 2024. Staff did prepare the budget itself with the principles and guidelines that govern development implementation of the Township of Langley's budget in line with the policy. The concern from staff in relation to that policy, since historically we didn't have a policy for budget, was the timeline itself. And as Mr. Mayor has mentioned, the biggest concern we had was with the North Shore wastewater treatment plant. And information we required from Metro Vancouver Regional District. Also, Council's direction in relation to voluntary water metering. That required us to retain consultants and also obtain readings prior to finalizing our utilities draft budget for Council's consideration.
Yes. Does that address that, Councillor?
Well, that answers that part of the question, because the reason I brought that up is because, as I remember it, when that motion was passed by a majority of council, I don't recall much discussion of that motion in that meeting. And to me, if there had been serious concerns about the process that was going to be unfolding after that motion was passed, I believe that would have probably been the appropriate time to address those kinds of concerns. So I find that this, unfortunately, is late in the sense of, if we wanted to fix the process before somebody might have considered it broken, this isn't the time to do so. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to maybe go a step further there, because I think it's appropriate now that you raised this. Item number 3, referring to the budget directives policy, which you've asked about. That was adopted on September 25th, 2023. And prior to that, there was no budget directives or budget policy that helped define what council wanted to see for budget process improvements. Now there's concern about this budget directives policy having been referred, having been rescinded for changes, and what's going on. But Councillor Richter voted against adopting it in the first place. So we're complaining about a policy that the mover voted against even adopting. So again, I'm going to have a few more comments at the end. Councillor Ferguson, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I think that I think just saying that there's no direct relationship to staff, and it's just 100% council that is being looked at here. I can't buy into that. I think that the words speak for themselves. I mean, I'm sure that, we have a respected union at the Township of Langley. I'm sure that their employees would be interested in looking at something like this and making their own opinion on it. And we have our exempt staff, we have our clerk staff. They can read words, and words are very powerful. And to say, oh, this is nothing, we're not really attacking anybody, but words, it says right here, the information was presented to council, And the mayor and any member of council can stand up in front of the Chamber of Commerce or Rotary Commission or Lions or a recreation group and say, I think the budget's going to be 5% or 5.5, but those are just comments. It has to be voted on. That's what's required. That's what's required under legislation under the Ministry of Municipal Affairs. But I do have a question. If I may, through the chair, we do have a formal audit process every year, do we not? If I may, through the chair, to whoever would answer it, if I may.
To your worship, to Councillor Ferguson, that is correct.
So, who are our auditors right now? There's been a number of different auditors over the years.
KPMG are our external
Yeah, so
auditors.
KPMRS have been a number of years they're an accounting firm that goes over the TOL and they find matters and look and see if we're following all the requirements. They're an outside body. They're separate and distinct from the Township of Lang. We have that. And also as far as following the, I guess, the necessary requirements of elections, of how we conduct our meetings, how we take minutes, how we take, do or vote for, how we have, acknowledgement of Indigenous rights. We have a whole list of things which we follow. I just find it hard to believe that there would be something in front of us to say that our staff isn't doing that. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just disappointed.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Bailey? Anything else?
This I see is directed at, thankfully, exempt staff. Because if I was a CUPE representative, and I have been for many years a representative of unions at fairly high levels, if this was if I was representing these people, there would be a grievance filed already. This is directly going towards staff. So intent is not the only thing you look at when it's this. It's how it is received by the people that are things. A lot of times you'll hear, I find that offensive, while someone else doesn't find it offensive. It's how it's received by the people. And how it's received by the staff is important, not just the intent that is put out by the people who either write it or support it. And I have to admit, and I will ask for some clarification on this. Constraints have been mentioned here. What constraints are we talking about? Because I know I don't have any constraints whatsoever talking about this. And I don't, I've only heard 2 people mention constraints. So if I could ask through the chair, what constraints are these, please?
Can you repeat that, Councillor Bailey? Maybe I'm not following. Who's
Well,
your question directed at?
2 councillors have mentioned that they can't comment on this because of constraints. I don't know what constraints these are, and I would really appreciate getting some clarification on that through the chair, if I could, please.
Either of you wish to respond?
Well, the 2 councillors that
I'm
have
not-
mentioned constraints.
Yeah, I'm not, neither one of them want to respond. And I'm not sensing any desire to respond, Councillor Bailey.
Well, to me, that speaks volumes. Then.
I'm going to call the question here in a moment. No more speakers. I think, what I want to make sure we don't do is let a motion like this distract from a great budget. So I want to thank again the staff here. I think bringing forward, I think our core municipal services has gone down. And, we are investing in historic investments in public safety expansion due to population growth and significant catch-ups with bylaw enforcement capacity and all other kinds of capital projects, from pickleball to, BMX track upgrades to all kinds of things that are funded in this budget. Something as simple as sports box upgrades that have been waiting for years. And what I see here, just my own personal interpretation, is a motion sort of rushed in, changed, and edited to try to create a narrative that distracts from a great budget. And let's not let it do that. And it'll be up to the media whether they let it do that. And I believe what we're starting to see is motions and commentary intended to generate a personal reaction from me that will then get clipped into an anonymous video. And it'll be up to the public whether they're going to vote for people that are doing that, or they're going to vote for people that are delivering one of the best budgets I've ever seen. So with that, I'm going to call the question on 03. And that carries with Councillor Pratt, Councillor Rent, Mayor Woodward, Councillor Van Popte, Councillor Bailey, Councillor Ferguson opposed. I do have another item of other business. If anybody else has one, I'll clear the queue. Do you have other business? Mr. Cooner, can you give an update on where do you think we'll be at with getting that report back to council on the requested report for the traffic calming at Gloucester Industrial Estates? I'm assuming there's been quite a bit of media and attention over that over the weekend. Do you have a timeline on when council can look at that, that implementation of that project?
Your worship, staff are aiming to bring the report forward for council's consideration February 24th.
Great. So does anybody, I mean, that's great timing. So hopefully we have an envelope in the budget bylaw for traffic calming projects. Maybe it'd be appropriate for staff to outline that as a potential funding source.
Staff will take that under consideration.
Great. Appreciate that. Is there any other business? Great. So does anybody have any items for special closed? Well, I now have a personal item to add to the special closed agenda. Does anybody else have anything else? Get a motion to resolve into special closed. Moved by Councillor Van Popte, seconded by Councillor Rent. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. That's carried with Councillor Richter opposed. Ms. Bauer? And get a motion to terminate. Moved by Councillor Van Popte, seconded by Councillor Rent. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you.